going to draw you in, Baha, in terms of you touched on the differences, the perceptions of different generations. And when you were reading the novel, were you reading this, I'm just curious personally, were you reading this as an Iranian American who has really grown up here, and how much of it resonated with you? You mentioned that obviously you thought about the personal connection in terms of your own son.
You know, I did read it, of course, as an Iranian American, because I've been here since I was 3. But everything, it wasn't foreign to me. I did learn a lot more about my mother's generation and how difficult it was for them, and you know, the balancing act of, you know, wanting to be more westernized and getting an education and having a career, but also the obligation to the home. It made it much more real to me. You know, and the whole courtship, I remember, you know, the whole Khastagar thing that, you know, I had heard of when they were in their generation. It just made it much more real to me. It wasn't foreign to me. Like these characters did seem real and people that we know, and so I did relate to them in that sense.
That's great. Well, I think now we're going to turn it to you, the audience. I'm sure you have questions and comments.
The other question, and I apologize, I don't mean to question you, but I'm very curious, that what keeps you writing about the past and the first 13 years of your life rather than the transition since you left, the current, the present, things that we are all struggling with as immigrants, the transitions, the complexity of, not that understanding the past will not contribute, but at least my hope is that with your vision and your depth to pull us through further and take us to the present.
Right. Well, no, that's a very good question. It's got 2 parts. Why do I write about the past? Because I guess I'm haunted by it. I don't know. It keeps coming back. That's one part. But the other thing is, my second novel, Moonlight on the Avenue of Faith, is about an Iranian girl in LA looking for a mother. It actually talks a lot about the experience of those first few years after the revolution, and then, you know, all the sort of Iranian landmarks that we've created here, you know, Eilat Market and all the difficulties of adjusting and you know, the language stuff. So there's that. And my third novel, Sunday Silence, actually takes place in Appalachia, and it's the story of a Kurdish Iranian woman trying to pass as an American, and it's really about faith and fundamentalism and how we're so alike now. The East and the West at our extremes are so alike, even though we don't think we are. And my next one that I'm working on right now is about the Iranian community in the United States now, 30 years later, and you know, all of our...
Fabulous. I look forward to
So yeah, I'm going to email you when that's coming out and reserve you a box of books.
I loved the novel.
Thank you.
I just loved it, and everybody seems so real to me, almost everybody. My question is a cultural question. I didn't understand why Baha was not accepted by her husband's family and their society, and yet the woman who became his mistress was accepted. And I didn't quite get that.
Well, the woman who becomes his mistress is from an aristocratic society. Iran was a very class-conscious, I guess you would say, society. It used to be you were either nobility from the kings, or you were peasants and serfs, and right, 2 classes. The Jewish community was more or less uniform up until the time of the Shah. We were all, well, I shouldn't say this, people will disagree with me, but there was no class difference, you know. Later on, everybody said, you know, they were aristocrats, but at the time, we didn't know that. Some of you know what I mean. What happened with the Shah, and when the country started developing and there was a lot of oil money, and the Shah actually gave a lot of opportunities to the Jews, which they hadn't had before, many Jews became very wealthy, and they integrated much more into the general society. And from then on, there was a big class difference between sort of the ghetto type Jews, which we literally, I think, called them Sarichali, right? The ghetto types, and the upper class, the so-called upper class Jews. And the upper class ones, perhaps because the past was too close and they saw many of their own reflections in those other people, really did not accept those amongst themselves. Now, that's to a great extent has changed in this country since we've come here. But I really remember even the early years of the revolution here, the kind of snobbery that the upper classes showed to the others. So that's what happens there. Whereas Niaz is, the mistress is the daughter of someone who was related to a Shah, and those people always had sort of a free pass to anything they wanted to do.
Thank you. Do you mean to say then that that Jewish generation was the first wealthy Jewish generation?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So they were what we would call nouveau riche.
Yes, but now we're all old money, and
Yeah,
we're all,
now you're old money. Okay.
now we're all East Coast socialites. But back then,
Thank you.
Yes, Gina, you know I'm a great admirer of the book.
likewise, this is
Thank you,
the
Glenn.
fabulous poet Janet Sternberg and writer.
Oh,
Thank you. Wow. I just want to tell you a little bit about my slightly alternate reading and just get your response. And it's not to differ from anything that has been said. It's to just shade it, perhaps as someone who is not Iranian. But an awful lot of what we've been talking about is a kind of sociology of literature in terms of theme, in terms of environment, and so on. And I just want to be clear, I don't want to be cliched about how the personal is universal or any of that. I just want to say that I read it, and for those who haven't, I really don't want to give away the ending, but I read it as though almost as though it were a great Russian novel, or Flaubert. Someone, I know it's very large praise, but I mean it, I really do, that there was a kind of inexorability about it. You know that I do need to take Prozac, whatever, but it did feel to me as though the issue of hope and not hope was a little bit of a false issue, that what it is moving toward is something that is sacrificial, is profound, is what has a parable-like quality to it. It's, and has, as you know, I greatly admire your honesty, honesty, these are all cliched words, your willingness to take what is inherent in your story and follow it all the way to an inevitability. And I think that it is simply literature.
Oh, well, good. Thank you.
And again, I don't just want to make sure that this is not about a difference, not about sociology versus. It is simply a reading. And I just wondered what any of you thought about it, that reading.
Oh, I actually couldn't agree with you more, because I teach Gina's books in my world literature courses precisely because this is not a sample of Iran. No author should be made to speak for. And Gina herself has just said, I shouldn't say this because that's a very tough job anyway. We don't ask writers to speak to X or Y or Z. We don't want I gave away my Canadianness right there.
Is it?
Is that I agree with you. This is just literature, and the pleasure of reading and being totally immersed in her fictional worlds. That's what drew it to. Has always drawn me to these novels. And you've just reminded me that the late Taqi Modarresi, the author in the husband of Anne Tyler, is the one who introduced me to Gina's works. He phoned me when I was living in Canada, and he said, you know, Nasreen, you should read this novel. It is such a great read. So exactly the same sentiment, and I couldn't agree with you more. But that's my
No, I like all this. I have no disagreement. It's all true. You know what? Some cliche. I mean, things become cliche because they are true. And I think the issue of the personal being universal is very true. The more honest you are and the more you write from the gut and the more you tell your own truth, or as you know it, the more it resonates with people of all over, of different backgrounds and orientations. So that certainly is true, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have time for another 5 minutes or so of questions, but just want to make sure everybody knows, in case you haven't yet read the book, that there are some signed copies out in the lobby that'll be available, and then Gina may sign some more, so definitely stick around.
This is good. Thank you. About the personal and the thing about the mother saying, not recognizing that the child has a problem, and thank you very much for sharing your personal thing. My mother, who was yet 2 generations before that, from Eastern Europe, was very much in denial about everything. And when there was something wrong with me, she would bring me to one doctor after another so as to be sure that they were all wrong, that they, you know. And so now I thought that was Eastern European Jewish. But apparently it's more universal than that.
It's called denial.
Jews have to be in denial. How else are we going to live with our history? But yeah.
Okay, thanks. I feel a little better. Thank you.
My question is also related. Thank you. I enjoyed the whole panel. I also love reading Gino's books, not only because it comes from within, but it's also because it has mastered the art of writing, and it's really nice. I wanted to reflect on what Nasreen talked about growing up in Iran and feeling first Iranian and then other ethnicities and so forth. I wanted to ask you if you, Bahar and Gina, if you consider yourselves as Jewish, Iranian, American woman, or would you reorder the adjectives? So from what I understand from English language, the adjective that you put closer to your the first name would declare your priorities. So in that order, how would you define yourself? Would you say you are Jewish, Iranian, American woman, or would you say you're Iranian American? And not only as you live now, but also when you reflect. Gina, do you reflect on the past as Nasreen did? Do you see Iran that way, or did you experience a different Iran? Thank you. Oh, and I also, to answer Nora's question, I also love reading Sunday's Silence, which is not at all about Iran. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a fabulous poet and writer, Ilham Qaytanchi, and professor of poetry. Well, I should let you go first. It's a difficult question.
You're much more articulate than I, but I would, for me, I am a Jewish American Iranian. I came here when I was 3. I grew up here. This is my country. I love the United States. Being Iranian is my culture. It's a beautiful, rich culture. It's my family. My family is my life. But Iran itself is just a distant dream. I was so young, you know. It's stories through my parents. It's not, I don't know it. It's my dream to one day be able to go back there with my parents and see all the places they've talked about. But in my heart of heart, I am a hardcore American girl. I married an American man. I am Jewish and very proud of that as well, but that would be my order. And that's why the book was so great for me, is because it gave me feelers for my parents and what their lives were, you know? And I don't get that very often. It's books like this that let you, explore and really learn about your past or your ancestors.